In this video I want to talk about muscles of the gluteal region. Muscles of the gluteal region, street slang, the butt. Okay, muscles of the gluteal region are actually for movement of the lower extremity. The largest muscle of the gluteal region, probably everybody is familiar with, in this model is in the darker brown. This is the gluteus maximus muscle. Gluteus maximus muscle. And then high and lateral to the gluteus maximus muscle, we'll actually see the gluteus medius muscle. I'm going to rotate this just slightly. We'll see the gluteus medius muscle actually comes from iliac crest all the way over to the anterior superior iliac spine. So it is also a large muscle, not nearly as bulky as gluteus maximus. Now, gluteus maximus and gluteus medius actually have very little overlap. If I show you this cutaway version where we've removed part of gluteus maximus and part of gluteus medius, you see there's very little overlap between gluteus maximus and gluteus medius. Gluteus maximus is low, posterior, whereas gluteus medius is a little higher and reaches around laterally, all the way to the anterior superior iliac spine. Gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, and then deep to gluteus medius we will see one more gluteal muscle called the gluteus minimus. Gluteus maximus is a lateral rotator at the hip as well as an extensor at the hip. Gluteus medius is a medial rotator and an abductor of the hip, and gluteus minimus is an abductor of the hip. Some books will say medial rotation. It plays very little, if any, role in medial rotation. Now that's okay for A and P1, those three muscles. Now if you're in the human anatomy class, there are 6 other lateral rotators in the gluteal region, and we can see in this particular model this dark triangular shaped muscle coming from the pelvis across to the greater trochanter, the crest of the greater trochanter, is the piriformis muscle, sometimes referred to as the landmark of the gluteal region, because things above the piriformis muscle are generally named superior gluteal, whereas below inferior gluteal, for example, the arteries, the nerves. Also, under cover of piriformis, we will see the largest nerve of the body emerge to go into the thigh. That is the sciatic nerve. Immediately below the piriformis muscle, we have a little triad of muscles. The middle muscle in this triad is called the obturator internus muscle. Now this obturator internus muscle is much larger than it appears in this portion of the torso. It actually comes from inside the pelvis, where it was a quite large muscle. But it rounds around behind the pelvis and passes by the ischial tuberosity to go out to the intertrochanteric crest of the femur. So we're only seeing a very small portion of obturator internus muscle on this model. Above the obturator internus muscle is a small muscle which joins that obturator internus. It is called the superior gemellus. And immediately below the obturator internus is another muscle which also joins obturator internus called the inferior gemellus. And if you remember in anatomy, we don't use words we don't need. So if this was a superior gemellus, you know there's going to be an inferior gemellus, or we wouldn't have called this one the superior. So the little triad, obturator internus with a superior gemellus and an inferior gemellus. The next muscle we see is a short but thick 4-sided muscle called the quadratus femoris muscle. Quadratus femoris muscle. Now on this model we cannot see the 6th lateral rotator that I was talking about. It actually comes from the anterior pelvis, and had they made the model correctly you would see its tendon in this small gap right here. That is the obturator externus. So as I said, the 3 gluteals, gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, gluteus minimus muscle, and then 6 lateral rotators. The piriformis, superior gemellus, obturator internus, inferior gemellus. In the gap we should see the tendon from obturator externus, and then the quadratus femoris. 6 lateral rotators. Add in the gluteus maximus, there are 7 muscles which function for lateral rotation at the hip. In this video I want to start addressing the muscles of the lower extremity. I want to start by addressing muscles of the gluteal region, the muscles which move the lower extremity. We've already seen these muscles on the torso model if you've watched that video first. I want to talk about gluteal muscles, First of all, the lowest, more medial muscle of the gluteal region, and the largest, the gluteus maximus. Gluteus maximus inserts on the gluteal tuberosity of the femur. It also inserts into a band of connective tissue known as the iliotibial tract on the femur. So gluteus maximus. Let us remove gluteus maximus, and then on these particular lower extremity models, we have a little bit of a problem because the remainder of this, from here all the way to the anterior superior iliac spine, should be the gluteus medius muscle inserting on the greater trochanter of the femur. If we could remove that, there should be a gluteus minimus deep to that muscle. However, I believe that the model manufacturers were trying to say that this would be minimus and this would be medius because of the way they have carved out a deeper line here in the model. In either case, that would not be true. All of this would be gluteus medius. If we could remove that, deep to that would be gluteus minimus. Okay, that would be enough for ANP1. However, for the higher level anatomies, as we learned with the torso model, there are 6 more lateral rotators which can be seen in this region. I'm going to remove the muscles of the posterior thigh temporarily so we have a better view of those lateral rotators. In the posterior thigh, after we remove gluteus maximus, we can see a large triangular shaped muscle coming from the pelvis over to the intertrochanteric crest of the femur called the piriformis muscle, the landmark of the gluteal region. And it's easy to tell because the sciatic nerve, the largest nerve in the body, emerges below that piriformis muscle. Then we should have a small triad of muscles, and if you look very carefully on this model, you can see right here in the middle there is a muscle. It is the obturator internus muscle. The majority of that muscle is inside the pelvis. It is a fairly large muscle. We only see a very small portion of the muscle here on the posterior aspect of this model. Immediately above the obturator internus, we have the superior gemellus muscle. It joins the obturator internus on its trip to the intertrochanteric crest of the femur. And immediately below the obturator internus, we have the inferior gemellus muscle. Then on this model, just inferior to that, we have the muscle known as the quadratus femoris. Quadratus femoris, a small, short, four-sided muscle, but fairly thick muscle. So 5 of the 6 lateral rotators we can see: the piriformis, superior gemellus, obturator internus, inferior gemellus, quadratus femoris. As on the torso, you cannot see the tendon of the obturator intern or externus in this particular view. So those are the muscles of the gluteal region.